Hi everyone, welcome to the revision video of this paper's grade 11 paper written last year, March 2022. For this video, we'll be doing question 1, specifically question 1.1. So this whole part, learning how to solve for x, a couple of ways, and in the next video, we're just doing 1.2. Stay tuned and see the next video. Alright, let's go. So 1.1. So basically here what you need to learn is just how to solve for x. There's a couple of ways of doing it, but I'm going to show you a specific way that works all the time, and you won't go wrong if you learn this one method, right? But there are other many methods that you can use if you are learned in how to solve for x, but this one you won't go wrong, you won't get your answer wrong, and it's easy to remember every time when you need to use it. Okay, so let's go. So firstly, if you have a situation like, for example, 1.1.1, if you have x minus 2 and x plus 7 is equal to 0. So in mathematics, we call this situation factors, right? We call these factors, right? These are the factors. So if you have anything like this, if you have like let's say x times p, or let's call just say y for argument's sake, y is equal to 0. The rule here is you say x is equal to 0 or y is equal to 0. So this says that if you have, let me just write with a different color, if you have x times y is equal to 0, the rule here is x is equal to 0 or y is equal to 0. So this says that if you have x, we don't know what x, but you say you have a value called x and you have another value called y. If you times these two and they give you 0, your response, you say then x can be 0 because 0 times y is 0, or y can be 0 because x times 0 is 0. That's basically how you see this, right? So even with this one here, so you are, let me just wrap this off. So you are told that if you multiply this with this, you get 0. So your answer will be, okay, this can be 0 or x plus 7 can be 0. So one of the two should be 0, because 0 multiplied by something is equal to 0. Doesn't matter what it is, that's something, right? So if you have two things that you multiply and you get 0, so one of them must be 0. This is what this equation says. So one of them must be 0. So it's either x minus 2 is equal to 0 or x plus 7 is equal to 0. And then from here you can say x. So what you do is you take this negative and you put it in your right hand side, you change the sign, it becomes positive, so it's going to be positive 2. So you're going to have 2. And then here you're doing the same thing, you take this positive 7, put it on your right hand side, change the sign, becomes negative, so it's going to be negative 7. So x is equal to negative 7. Boom. So this is how you solve your solution. You get your 2 marks. Boom, boom. Get your 2 marks. And then 1.1.2. So with 1.1.2, so you have x, 5x minus 3 is equal to 1. So with x, 5x minus 3 is equal to 1. Here, right, you cannot say x is equal to 1 or 5x minus 3 is equal to 1. This is not applicable here. This, what I just taught you here, it's applicable if it was equal to 0. But now if it's equal to another number, then we cannot say that. But if this was 0, we're going to do the same thing and say x is equal to 0 or 5x minus 3 is equal to 0. But in this case, it's not 0, it is equal to 1, so we cannot do that. So we need to come up with another approach. So what I would do here is I would actually remove this bracket. So what I would do is say x times this, get my answer, and say x times this and get my answer. So you have so x times 5x is 5x squared, and x times negative 3 is negative 3x. So we've removed the bracket, still equal to 1. What you do is you take that 1, put it on your left hand side, it becomes negative. So you're gonna have 5x squared minus 3x minus 1 is equal to 0. Then this is the, so from here, as I said earlier on in my introduction, there's a couple of ways of solving this problem, right? Couple of ways to do it. You can use a calculator. With other videos, I'm going to show you how to use the calculator. Please check my previous videos, the videos where I've shown you how to use a calculator. And you can use other methods, but the method I want to teach you is how to solve a quadratic equation with a quadratic formula, right? I don't want you to stress out and trying to figure out how to solve this problem all the time. When you have a quadratic equation, this is a quadratic equation. How do we know it's a quadratic equation? Because it has x power 2. If it has x power 2, we use a quadratic formula all the time. Use a quadratic formula, right? Unless you know other methods and you're good at those methods. So this is a quadratic formula. Uh, 2a. So this is a quadratic formula and it works all the time. So use this quadratic formula. So a quadratic formula is applicable. Let's say you have a quadratic equation. A quadratic equation, let's say it's ax squared plus bx, let's say minus c is equal to 0. All right, that's your quadratic equation. So in this case, your this a that you see here is this a, and this b that you see here is this b, and the c that you see here is that c, right? So in this case, in our context, a is 5, b is 3, that's b, and b is 3, so necessary not just 3 but this whole thing here, b is 3, so negative 3, so b is negative 3, c still is negative 1, so that's c. Okay, so that's how you use a quadratic equation. I'm sure you know it, so let's go. From here you substitute the formula, and then that's it. You use the calculator and you get your answer. So if x is equal to negative, what is b? B is negative 3, plus or minus, b still negative 3 squared minus 4. What is your a? A is 5, good, times c. C is negative 1 divided by 2 times a, which is 5, right? So if x is equal to, now you just punch this in your calculator, so you can just leave it the way it is. So you have two ways of doing it. You can take your calculator and then punch it the way it is from your calculator. So you have, let me clear up my calculator. So you have negative, punch the way it is, negative 3. Let's start with plus, square root, open bracket, negative 3, close bracket, square that, minus 4 times 5, right, times negative 1 over 2 times 5, and you get your answer. Your answer is 3 plus square root of 29 over 10. That's your answer. Or x is equal to, so you're doing the same thing. You keep the equation that is in your calculator, and then now you just put a minus instead of a plus. So you put a minus instead of plus, equal sign, you have 3 minus 29 over 10. That's your answer. Boom. That's what they need. That's what they want to see, and you get your answer, get your 4 marks. So the 4 marks will come from doing this. That's the first mark, and rearranging this as well, and then getting your final answers. That's how your 4 marks will come. So that's why they don't necessarily give you the answer to what method to use, because students will use different methods. So but your answer should always be the same, and this is one of the easiest methods you can learn how to solve for x. Okay, all right, great. So 1.1.3, so let's go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this off. Okay, 1.1.3, have x squared minus x minus 6 less than 0. So this is now not equal to 0, but there's a inequality sign involved, right? So you need to treat this differently and be careful with it, right? So there's a reason why it's 3 marks. There's a way of doing this, but you need to treat it carefully. So the way you read this is solve for x, where x, when you substitute that value of x, it gives you a negative number, right? Solve for x, where when you substitute that value of x that you get, it gives you a negative number. Okay, so that's basically what they want us to do here. So the first thing you need to do is you can just solve for x, what we know, equal sign firstly. So first, where we know it, again, you use a quadratic equation. Okay, quadratic equation says x is equal to minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, and what is your b? B in this case is -1, right? This is b, this is -1, and then c, -6, this is c, and then a is +1, this is a. Okay, +1. So b is -1 plus or minus -1 squared minus 4a 1c -6 divided by 2. What is a? That's 1. So you can now just quickly punch this in and calculate the way it is. -1. Let's start with the plus. Square root of -1, close the bracket, square, minus 4 times 1 times -6 divided by 2 times 1. So you get x is equal to 3, or x is equal to, so now we can just, where there's 1 positive, you can just put negative now. So your x will be -2. So x is -3 or x is -2, right? So if you were solving for this is how you end, right? To get your 2 marks, this is how you end. But you're not solving for this equation, but you're solving for this equation here. Now it has an inequality sign, so now we need to introduce what you call a number line. So with the number line, what you do is you mark, let's put it 0 just to be able to mark where we are. So what you do is you mark the solution that you have. You have x equal to 3 and x equal to -2. So let's say this is where 3 is, and this is where -2 is. Okay, this is where 3 is, this is where -2 is, and then you say where there is x. So what you do is let's look at 3 first. It's just 3 for now. You take a value that is between 0 and 3, right? Take that value, any value between 0 and 3. Between 0 and 3. So take any value that's between 0 and 3. Don't take 0, don't take 3. Any value between 0 and 3. 1. Can take 1, can take 2, right? Take any that value, and then take your calculator and punch it in your calculator and say, so any value that's between 0 and 3, substitute 1 there. If you take 1. So where there's x, you put 1. So what you get, so it's going to be 1 squared, which is 1, minus 1, which is 0, 0 minus 6, that is negative. So if you substitute any value between 0 and 3, even if you do it with 2, substitute any value between 0 and 3, you're going to get a negative number, right? Now, take any value that is greater than 3. Any value, go wild, any value. Let's say you take 4, okay? So take 4 and substitute 4 in this equation. What do you get? So you're going to have 4 squared minus 4, that is 12, and then 12 minus 6, that is 6. So we get a positive value. Can take any value you see, you're always going to get a positive value. So meaning now you have negative that side and a positive that side. Okay, that's fine. And then now let's take any value again that is between 0 and -2. Any value between 0 and -2, I think of -1. You can take half, -half, negative whatever, but as long as between 0 and -2, as long as that value is there, just take that value and substitute it in your equation. But don't complicate your life. You can take -1 is fine. So -1 squared minus -1 minus 6, you get -4. So you get a negative value, so you write negative. Okay, now take any value that is greater than negative, in fact smaller than -2, because now you're looking at the negative direction of the number line. So any value is smaller than -2, take -3. If you want to, -4, -10, whatever. So let's take -3 and substitute in the equation. So where there's x, you put -3 minus -3 minus 6. You get 6. So you get a positive number. Okay, so any value you put that's smaller than -2, you get a positive number. Alright, and then what you do is you have open dots. We call open dots. Why writing open dots is because of a number line. So I mean, it's because of an inequality. So if this is just greater than, so if it's greater, let me write this down. If it's greater than, or if it's sorry, this is less than, and if it's greater than, you use an open dot. But if it was greater than or equal, I mean less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, you use closed dot. That's very important. This has marks, so you use open dot or closed dot. Very important, right? So since we have just a less than, we're gonna use an open dot. So say open dot. Now what we're trying to solve? We're trying to solve for a value of x where it is negative. Value of x where is less than 0. So value of x is less than 0, meaning where is negative. So if you substitute any value that's between -2 and 0, you get a negative. So we're gonna just do this, say pointing that way, that dot should point that way, point where it's negative. Even this one should point where it's negative, because that's what we are solving. If we were solving where it was positive, so if this was greater than 0, then this dot will point this way and this dot will point that way. Okay, so now how do you represent this in an equation? What you do is you can say, okay, the value of x should be greater than, it should be between, like the value of x should be between -2 and 3. Do you agree? The value of x should be between here. So the value of x should be between -2 and 3. So this is your answer. So what this answer says that if you take a value of x that is between -2 and 3 and substitute it in this equation, you are gonna always get, your answer is always gonna be 0. You can check this yourself, but we did check it when we're doing a number line to actually identify that number. So any number that is between -1, any number that's between -2 and 3, if you substitute in this equation, you get 0. Now let's say this was greater than 0, right? If it was greater than 0, so meaning this was going to point this direction and this dot is going to point this direction, right? So your equation will be x should be less than -2, or x should be greater than 3, right? X should be less than -2 or x should be greater than 3 if the equation was just greater than 0. That's how you would actually get your answer. Do the same thing, but you look at where your dots are pointing. If they're pointing negative, if they're pointing positive, this is what you do. Okay, all right, great. So that's 1.1.3. all right, and 1.1.4, let's write this off. So 2x plus 2x plus 1 is equal to 48. So what you need to remember here is this. So if you have, let's call it notes. If you have let's say a plus a power x is equal to, I don't know, let's call it 2. Okay, so these are the bases are the same, right? So what you can do is you can factor out a common value here. Common value here is a, right? Factor that a. So a, if you factor that a, then you're gonna say a over a get 1, so it's 1, and then say a power x over a is a. Your answer is a power x minus 1, right? Because if you remember again, a power x over a is a, because you're dividing, you minus the exponent. So x this x power minus 1, this 1 there. So because you're dividing the same basis, therefore you minus the exponent. this will be equal to 2. So that's basically what you will do in this situation. So if you have two bases that are the same, you see bases that are the same, try to factor out that common factor, do it the way you see it, and then you try to simplify it further. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So what is a common factor here? Common factor, one would say 2 is fine, but it's not really a common factor. The highest common factor is 2x, right? Because there is 2x there. So the highest common factor is 2x, so you have 2 power x. So then you can say 2x divided by 2 power x divided by 2 power x, that's 1. And then doing the same thing here, 2x plus 1 divided by 2x, again you're dividing, so you have so 2x plus 1 over 2 power x, so you're dividing, so 2x plus 1 over 2 power x, so basically the same, so you have 2 power x plus 1 minus that x at the bottom, so you have 2 power, so that x and that x, they cancel each other, so you have that positive 1, which is just equal to 2. Okay, so 2x plus 1 over 2x is just equal to 2. So you write that down, so you have 2 is equal to 48, and then this will be 2x, 1 plus 2, that's 4, 48. Now we're going somewhere, because we're solving for x, let's just divide it by 4 on both sides. Okay, so there'll be 2 power x, then this 4 and this 4 cancels, just 4 over 4, that's 1. It's equal to 48 divided by 4, that is 4 times 12, that's 48, so that's 12. And then from here, the way to solve this problem, right, is to think of this these notes here about exponents. So if you have two bases, let's say 2 power 2, and then you have let's call it 4, right? Let me not write it this way, this is a wrong example. 2 power a is equal to 4, and the question is solve for a, right? Solve for a. What you would do is you'll say, okay, cool, how can I transform 4 in the sense that I write, instead that I write base 2 power something. What is that something that would give me 4, right? So if you don't know, you can just start from 1 and gradually grow, punch in your calculator and gradually grow from there. So for example, if you say 2 power 1, that's 2, so 2 is not equal to 4, so you know, take that one and then let's put 2 there. So 2 power 2, that's 4. So the number that you can write now is 2 power 4. So 2 power a the side. So now the rule says if these bases are the same, therefore the exponent should be the same. So a is equal to 2. So that's how you will solve for a. Even with this problem here, of course, there's another way of doing this. You can use logarithm and whatnot. Check out other videos. I've done videos where I teach both exponential way of solving this problem, or also the log functions or natural functions methods that you can use to solve this problem. But this is applicable for exponents as well. Okay, so we're doing the same thing here. So if 2 power x, so what we're going to do is we're going to write 2 power something, in a sense that if we substitute that something, it should give us 12. All right, so you can start from 1. So what is 2 power 1? So 2 power 1 is, again, 2 power 1 is 2, right? So that's not 12. Now you can say, now substitute that, let's make it 2. What is 2 power 2? 2 power 2 is 4, right? Now let's do 3. What is 2 power 3? 2 power 3 is 8. Okay, now let's do 4. 2 power 4. 2 power 4 is 16. Okay, so jump. So we did something wrong here. So if 2 power 3 is 8, so we did something wrong here. So again, I'm not gonna cut this part because it's very important. That's what math is teaching you. Right now, you already see that this is not making sense, because naturally this is an elemental math. Everything is set up in a sense that doesn't complicate things. So if you can't find a whole number that can give you 12, don't worry, don't try to be complicated. Just know that there's something wrong here, because now if you have 2 power if you have 2 power 3, you get 8, but if you have 2 power 4, you get 16. We've jumped 12, so then in your mind you should know, okay, cool, did something wrong. We did something wrong. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna go back and check what you did wrong. And that's what you're learning from high school maths. You're learning how to find a solution yourself and how to actually gain intuition to learn that you are the solution that you've provided is not correct, and go back and try to figure out where you got it wrong. So let's try and do that together. So let's do this again. So you factor out 2x, that's fine. If you factor out 2x, you're gonna be 1 plus that's where you got it wrong. I'm sure most of you saw this error. 1 plus 2 is 3, not 4, not 4. So yeah, so this happens all the time. Always make silly mistakes. So it's not 4, it's 3. This is 3. Divide this by 3. So 48 divided by 3, that's 16. So you have 16. There we go. So we're doing something. Now we have 16, and we already know. So we already figure out that 2 power 4 is 16. 2 power 4 is 16. So that's how you always check yourself, have the intuition, gain the intuition of actually finding that your answer is correct or right, and prove it. And we call this, when we're doing coding, we call this debugging. This, what you're learning here in mathematics, is teaching you, if you do want to do computer science or IT or engineering or anything scientific, you always have to debug your code, debug your theorem, debug your theory when you're providing a solution to business. So that's a very important skill that you are learning right now. All right, great. So you have 2 power x is equal to 2 power 4. So this is equal to x equal to 4. That's your final answer. All right. Now let's do 1.1.5. 1.1.5. So we have 2x minus 1 plus 2 is equal to x. Now how do you solve this problem? Again, when you look at this, you want to remove the square root here, right? You want to remove the square root. So the normal way you remove square root is just times the 1 over 2 with 2, then cancel the square root. So you're gonna then natural way to do it, just take this to the right hand side and solve and try to cancel the square root. So you have 2x minus 1, it's in the square root, and then take that 2 to the right hand side, change sign, become negative. So you have x minus 2. Okay, from here then we can cancel the square root. To cancel the square root, you can just put the square on both sides. The reason we cannot do this, because you're not cancelling the square root, still have that 2 there, right? To able to fully calculate the square root, you just have to like do what I did here, and then introduce the square on both sides, and then that square root will be cancelled by that square. So you're gonna have 2x minus 1 is equal to x minus 2 squared. Okay, and then from here you can now remove the bracket. The way I do this in my head, I do this, right? It's very important. Probably there's other ways of doing this problem, but the way I would do it, I will say, number 1, square the first term. So let me just obviously probably write this down, how I would do this. Firstly, square. So you square the first term. So you square the first term, okay, and then you times the 2 terms. So if you have x1 times x2, and then you multiply those 2 terms, or the product of that, by 2, and then you square the last term, right? So the first term in this case, this is x1, and the second term in this case is x2. Okay, first term is x1, second term is x2. Okay, so you square the first term, times the 2 term and twice the product, and square the last term. So this is how we remove the bracket. So you square the first term, you have x squared, times the 2 terms, you have negative 2x, and then times that negative 2x plus with 2, we have negative 4x. So you have negative 4x, and then square the last term. So negative 2 power 2, that's positive 4. Okay, so you have 2x minus 1 is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 4. And then from here, what you can do is you can now take what we can do, you can take this 2x minus 1 to the right hand side. So you have 0 is equal to x squared minus 4x, that minus 2x. So what we're doing is we take that negative 2, grouping the like terms at the same time. So 2 to the right hand side becomes negative, so you have negative 2x, and take the negative 1 to the right hand side becomes positive, you have positive 1. So 4 plus 1, grouping the like terms at the same time. So 0 is equal to x squared minus, so now let's treat the like terms. So negative 4x minus 2x is negative 6x, and then 4 plus 1 is 5. My mind was already ahead. And from here, we already know this. We've already solved this problem, right? So try to pause this video and give me an answer, but you can actually follow through if you want to. So using a quadratic equation, so minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So what is your minus b? Minus b is, what is your b? B is negative 6. So we have negative 6 squared minus 4a. What is your a? A is 1. What is your c? Positive 5 divided by 2 times 1. Okay, so your x can now quickly go to your calculator and punch this, or use whatever method that you know to actually solve for this. As long as you are sure and how to get the answer, that's still fine. So negative times negative 6 plus, if we start with positive, negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5 divided by 2 times 1. So you get your x equal to 5, or your x is equal to, so if you change the positive sign to negative, you get positive 1. So that's your answer, x equal to 5 or x is equal to 1. Boom, that's how you would solve this. And then your marks here will come from let's see, 1 for doing this. I'll give 3 marks for answers, and I'll give probably 1 mark for this as well. So you get your 4 marks. Boom, already get your 2, 4, 6, 9, 13 plus 4 again at 17 marks. So you already have your 17 marks secured. Boom. Right, this is awesome. See you to the next video. On this video, I'll be doing this question here: solve for x and y simultaneously. I'll be doing simultaneous equation. It looks complicated.